Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for coming to our session. This is going to be a live demo of Backdrop CMS. We're going to be doing a tour through some basic site building tasks, and we're going to try and point out the differences between Drupal 7 and Backdrop. For those of you who have experience with Drupal 7, it'll look mostly the same, and so you need us here to be like, oh, we changed that thing, and so that's why we're here. My name is Jen Lampton. I'm one of the founding forkers of Backdrop CMS. I'm particularly passionate about usability, so the things I'm going to be pointing out, my favorite features are usually user-focused.
Yeah, and I'm Nate Lampton, and I'm the primary core committer for Backdrop. Although we don't do this by ourselves, we have a large, moderate-sized community, I should say, some of whom are in the room here, present with us. So we're going to be going through this demo portion of Backdrop. Yeah, and we're going to show you guys the ropes.
So, for starters, it doesn't look like Drupal. It took us a couple of releases to add a new front-end theme, but we did eventually get one in West Ruvacabla. I think I got that right. Created the theme for us, which is great, and in the most recent version we added color settings, which we'll demo later. But, ta-da, it looks different. So, a couple of things you'll notice. What do you want to start with? Let's do
responsive.
Oh, responsive. Okay, so yes, Drupal 7 out of the box is not responsive. That is because it is old, and we didn't know we would need that when we made it, which is fine. Backdrop is newer, and so we know it needs to work on phones and tablets, so every Backdrop site out of the box should be responsive. So that means all of the layouts are flexible, all of the menus are that collapse into, this is like a hamburger menu, you can click on it, they're all touch-friendly, they're all accessible through not only mobile, but also screen readers and all that.
Yep. In addition to that, did you know that admin bar is installed on over half of all Drupal websites?
It's not admin bar.
Admin menu, excuse me, admin menu. We called it admin bar.
Yeah.
Admin menu is installed on over half of all Drupal 7 sites. And then the equivalent for Drupal 8 that adds the drop downs is also incredibly popular. It's one of these things that's like, why don't we just take the solution that everybody really likes and put it in core?
That's our approach to solving most of these problems. If the problem has already been solved, we'll just adopt the most common solution that's out there. We put in some minor improvements when things go into core. Admin menu module for Drupal 7 was not responsive or touch-friendly, so we had to do a little cleanup on that. We also changed it to the name of it to be admin bar instead of admin menu. There's already a menu and it's called development. We thought that was confusing. So this is just an admin bar. And we have the version of admin menu that has the search box in it. This was in a special branch of admin menu for a really long time. I think it's been merged in now, so the main version has this now. But the point is so that it should be training you as a user where to find the particular page that you're looking for. So if you can't find the modules page, you'll find it once, and then you'll know where to find it in the future. And that's a lesson we took from Mac OS, where if you try and use the Finder, there's something in there, you do the same thing and it shows you, yes, where to find it in the future.
Okay.
So another thing you'll notice is that we've created some content. This is a little bit different from Drupal 7. We found that new users have a lot easier time editing something that's already there than trying to create something from scratch. So rather than when you log into Drupal, it says create some content, we're like, well, we'll just give them some stuff. It's not good. It's just content, but we figured that was still like a sort of a step in the right direction to help people out. Also, took a page from WordPress here where they give you some default content when you first install. Works for them, should probably work for us too. All right, so what we're going to do is create some content. Oh, you want to?
It's in there. Modules.
Oh. Okay, sure. So next step is installing modules. So Nate's going to go to the modules page, which is located under functionality. We have a search box at the top of the page. This is a lot of the reason people install this module called module filter, so that you can actually find the module you're looking for. We didn't want all of module filter. There's a lot going on in that module. We just took the search box. This is what went into Drupal 8 as well. So if you like the search box in Drupal 8, it's the same thing in Backdrop. There's also a contrib module for Drupal 7 called Instant Filter. If you want this right now, you can go ahead and install that on your Drupal 7 sites.
Sorry. Well, I've got a bunch of modules in here that I'm going to get rid of so that
You can see they're not
Yeah.
there and then put them there.
Exactly.
Ah. Okay, so if we're going to look for something like
Google, like analytics or web form.
web form, it's a good one. You can see that we don't currently have web form on our Backdrop site, but we could go to this Install New Modules tab, and we could search for web form there. This shows you all of the modules that are available for Backdrop. You can search for that one. It'll give you something you can click on to find out more about the module. It'll give you a summary of everything that's in that module's readme.md file. Say, oh yeah, I definitely want that. You can go ahead and add it to your installation queue on the right-hand side. So you could do a bunch of modules at once. You click the install button, and your Backdrop site will go to backdropcms.org. Actually, it'll go to GitHub and pull down the contributed project, unpack it, and put it in the appropriate location. That's what it's doing now. And then when it's done, it'll ask you if you want to turn it on.
Which I'm not actually going to do because
We've
got a thing at the end of it. So, but that did put web form module like onto my local install, and this is the sort of thing that's in the Drupal sphere. It'd be unlikely or less likely to be implemented because we're developers and we use command line tools like Drush and Composer to install our modules.
Or FTP.
No. But with Backdrop, we're really trying to cater ourselves as being more of a end user product, so more towards the site builder and even the like the new user, if you will, rather than catering towards developers. We have that audience of trying to be more welcoming to new inexperienced developers, essentially. Like, we want to instill the feeling of I can do this, and get them really far before they have to open a text file or the command line.
All right. So what we're going to do next is create a new page.
Okay.
So you will notice we've changed the names of our content types. Instead of being basic page and article, they're page and post. Again, copied from WordPress. Seems to work for them. We're going to have a lot of overlapping audience with WordPress, so it seems to make sense to use the terminology they're already familiar with. For the purposes of today's example, we're going to pretend we're making a portfolio website, so maybe for a company that builds websites. You guys might know something about that. So what we're going to do here is create a history page. As you would expect, there is a rich text editor. That is something that we would all expect from a CMS today. There's one in WordPress, there's one in Drupal 8. If we forked Drupal 7 and didn't include one, that would be redonkulous. So we added one. Ours has some cool features in it. So you can use an inline image button if you wanted to browse an image from here. You can find a safe image on Nate's computer, hopefully. There you go. We can stick one in. It'll be able to add alternate text, define a particular size if you want. You can align it if you would like to here, and you can also add a caption. And then if you insert it, it'll drop the whole thing in here. You also, if you don't want to define the image, you can use the resizey thing to resize it, or you can add your captions. And if you had chosen to align that image left or right, it would float and wrap the text around it as you would expect it to behave. It's probably good for this example.
Yeah. We can also, I always like to...
Yet.
Oh, okay.
We'll do it in the next one.
Fine.
He gets excited. Okay, so it also has normal image fields as you would expect, so you can add an attached image. I added this. Sorry, I was futzing with things before the demo. My bad. Anyway, publishing options. This is where we've got a couple of changes. So in our publishing options, we have the same default like publish checkbox that you had from Drupal, but we specifically itemized the different states that you can create an article in. So you can publish it right now, you can save it as a draft, or you can schedule it for later. So this schedule for later feature is something that was in scheduler module for Drupal 7. It's something that's built into core in WordPress. So it was, again, for future parity, we need to make sure we can do at least what they can do. So we put the schedule for later in, so now you no longer have to wake up at 5:59 in order to publish that blog post at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, which is great. We hope for most of our people. Authoring information is mostly the same, only difference is that we now have a date field there instead of just a text field. URL settings. Path is the same as it was in Drupal 7, but we've added token and path auto into core. So there's a checkbox at the top there for generate automatic URL alias. alias. That's something we all expect. I think in WordPress they're called. What do we get? Oh, okay. So it also has normal image fields as you would expect. So you can add an attached image. We can stick one in. It'll be able to add alternate text, define a particular size if you want. You can align it if you would like to here, and you can also add a caption. And then if you insert it, it'll drop the whole thing in here. You also, if you don't want to define the image, you can use the resizey thing to define a particular size if you want. I forget what they're called, but they have it in WordPress, so we needed it too. Menu settings is the same, I think, as it was in Drupal 7. We're going to go ahead and add a menu link, only instead of putting a top-level item in, we're going to put it in as a sub-page of the About section. And then comment settings, these are the same as we saw in Drupal 7 as well. Maybe some clearer description text, but that's about it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and create a piece of content.
Didn't I? Oh.
Wait, no, that's good. Let's show that.
Okay, sorry.
That was good.
Sorry.
Happy accident. Okay, so we also added an indicator so that you can tell when you're looking at a piece of content that's unpublished. I think a couple different themes in Drupal had this as well, like in Bartik, they were all pink nodes, and if you knew what that meant, then you were good, and if you didn't know what that meant, you'd be like, why is it pink? Something's wrong with my theme. No, it's fine. So yeah, we did the same thing here, only we just put some text on it, so this is done in the theme as well. You can extend this theme if you want this functionality. You can add something else in a different theme if you don't want that.
Also handy, this we borrowed it from Android actually. It tells you how long into the future it is before you publish something, because sometimes you're like, no, it's supposed to be like 20 minutes from now, not 24 hours from now. And so just calculating the increment and saying how long into the future that is handy. So I'm going to publish this though, because we need it in the menu.
Right now.
Published.
Oh, this button is blue.
Oh, yeah.
That's another thing too. There's so many cool things, I forget about all of them. We tried to make it clear on every given form which button you're going to click most of the time and make it blue, so that you don't have to think. You just click the blue button, and then only in rare cases where you actually need to think about what you're doing, you can read the other buttons. But another happy accident while we're here, we have added this new preview button, which is not going to be a new button for those of you coming from Drupal 7, but we did not have preview and Backdrop between 1.0 and 1.12 because the preview did not work, so we threw it away. But in 1.12 we added in a preview that does work. So if you go ahead and preview this content, we have now figured out this problem, which is we included a solution that's very similar to what went into Drupal 8. But this is now a preview of your site using your front-end theme, using the full or default view mode. You have the ability to change the view mode if you want to see it different. Those of you who don't know who view modes are, it doesn't matter, but if you want to see what it looks like as a teaser, you can do that. And then here gives you the option to save, or you can go back to your edit form. All right, so one thing you probably didn't notice, because we just saved that piece of content 3 times in a row, is that we've now gained a little tiny arrow next to the word about, and we've got automatically a drop-down menu. So this is, again, what people expect. It's what they get in WordPress. It's something that's sort of hard to do in Drupal. And we just figured we better include a responsive, touch-friendly drop-down menu out of the box in Backdrop. So if we shrink this down, our hamburger menu now has like a 2-step open, so you can get to all the second-level items. So trying to be a time saver for our site architects in Backdrop. Oh, well, we didn't do it. That's okay. We'll do it next piece of content. Let's go ahead and create a post. More fun stuff to show you. All right, title is the same as we just saw. So our tags are the same as how they were in Drupal 7. Body field works the same, but Nate's going to show you an even cooler way to insert an image that I don't even think WordPress has yet.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, I don't know.
We'll see. So he's going to take a screenshot of the same page we're on, just because that's convenient.
No. Here we go.
Oh, desktop screenshot?
I don't know, just something different.
Something different. There we go. So now he's screenshot that to his computer's clipboard. He's going to go back to the text area and paste. And what it'll do is automatically upload that file behind the scenes. And this will track it in Backdrop's internal file system, the same way a file uploaded into a file field would be tracked, or the way a file uploaded via the little image button that we clicked last time is added. Can you do that again?
The source?
Yeah, and so for those of you who are curious how that works, what it does is it adds a data attribute for the file ID, and that maps to the ID in the file system so that Backdrop can keep track of which images are being used on which pages, gives you the ability to update an image in one place and it'll update all pages where they're used, or when you delete all the pages that are using it, it can also go through and delete the image afterwards. Just a little kind of maintenance and cleanup on better file managing. All right, wait. One thing that you'll notice here is that we have some new options on the publishing options page. We have a checkbox for promoted and one sticky up top of lists. Just make a little mental note that, that's funny, I didn't see those on the basic page, and we will show you how that's done later. Okay. All right, so now we have a blog post. I wanted to make you wrap the text around the image. Can you just put in a bunch of copy, paste, and then, no, it's fine. Actually, it's fine. That's okay. Carry on, it's different. All right. Okay. Content architecture. We're going to create a new content type.
Can we go to the files page?
Oh yeah, sure.
Just for fun.
We'll show you the files page we were just talking about.
So here's that image that that I uploaded from the clipboard, for example, and we can see. Actually, it doesn't. This is not clickable. But if I were to go to delete it, for example, you can delete it, but it says, "Hey, that image is being used over here and anywhere else that's being used." So it lets you delete it if you want to, but it's like, that is not advisable. You should go to these pieces of content. And if I were to delete this image out of here, it would realize that the image was no longer used any place, and it would switch it from being a permanent image to a temporary one, which means after 6 hours it'll get cleaned up by the cron jobs. So
does that happen with revisions as well, or? I've noticed that in Drupal 7, like, it'll show it that it's connected if it's in an old revision.
Yeah, if it's an old revision, it'll still count as being associated with that piece of content. Yeah, this ability to track where files were used exists in Drupal 7, but only exists within the managed file elements or field or image fields. Right. It doesn't apply to the rich text editor in most cases. You probably could rig it up, but yeah, this all just kind of works like.
Oh, also, this is a view. So most of our admin pages have been converted from the manual listings as they were in Drupal 7 to views in Backdrop, because we have views in core, as you would expect. Drupal 8 has them too. It's a good idea. They did require converting a couple of things like our actions, that bulk views operations module operations also ended up in there too. So doing things like deleting files and publishing and unpublishing content and all of that stuff is also in there. All right, let's go to creating a new content type. So under structure, you have the option to add a new content type. And because this is going to be our company's portfolio website, we're going to create a project. All right, so description is the same as it was in Drupal 7. So is the submission form settings. We have an issue to move that to a better place. Publishing settings. So this is where you can decide whether your editors can choose to schedule this type of content or not. You can choose to allow your editors to make this type of post sticky or not, and you can choose to allow them to make it promoted. So this just gives our higher level architects the ability to customize that content creation form just a little bit more than they did before. And if you can remove all of the options that aren't necessary, that'll make the content creation process less overwhelming for editors. We've also added a new section here for permissions. So every time you create a new content type, you can set the permissions in the same form. This just prevents bouncing around in the administrative interface going from one section of the site to the other. Setting permissions is something that I, as an expert, forget all the time. It's something that's just, not necessarily what you're looking at. You give it to the client and go, give it a shot, let me know what you think. And they go, I don't see anything. And you're like, oh, the permissions. So this also solves a little bit of a bug that was in Drupal 7 where the administrator role didn't necessarily get permissions for adding new content types. We just, by checking those boxes by default on this form, that happens to solve this bug. All right, URL alias patterns. This is your path auto settings. This is another thing that is often overlooked in Drupal. We set a sort of intelligent default by using the content type name here, but a lot of people prefer to have the plural version of their content type name, so you're also allowed to set this as you create your new type of content. Revision settings, the only improvement here is that you're allowed to turn them on and off by content type. You don't need to govern that by permissions anymore. Menu settings, mostly the same, except for I think it now uses states where it didn't before. Display settings, mostly the same except for we split the checkbox for the username and photo. Oh, new feature. All right, so as of Backdrop 1.12, we've also added a
Actually,
check.
111.
111. I get excited. 112's in the future. We added this new checkbox to hide path display. This is the rabbit hole module, modified version of it, that we moved into core in the last release. So if you wanted to create a content type for like a slide that you didn't want to be visited on its own page, a block type, for example, would be a good example of something you don't want viewed on its own page. You can check that box, and then the path that goes to that piece of content will now return a access denied message or page not found or something.
Yeah, page not found.
Page not found. So that gives people a little bit more flexibility of what they can do with their content types out of the box. And comment settings are mostly unchanged, just some minor cleanup on form elements. All right, blue button, white button, cancel link. We're going to click the blue button. So this is same old field UI from Drupal 7. We have an issue to work on that too. This is a hard problem. We're going to add a couple of new fields here. The first one we're going to add is a screenshot field, which of course we need when we're creating a photo gallery. It'll be image, works the same way you're used to in Drupal 7. Public files is fine. All these settings are fine. This is mostly the same with the exception of changing from text fields to number fields because we're now using HTML5 elements everywhere. We got another field for publish date or launch date. Launch, I guess. You don't publish a website anymore. What is it, 1997? Hey, date field in core. So this is date was a contrib module that used to include like a date field, date API, date pop-up, and date repeat. Of all of those modules, date repeat is the only one that remains a contrib project because repeating dates we didn't feel was a majority use case for core. But all of those other modules are in core, and this is an example of taking what already worked in Drupal 7 and dropping them in. So if you have a Drupal 7 site that was using date fields, it'll be exactly the same as Backdrop. So we're going to save. This will give us options. We don't need to track hour or minute. We can go ahead and save. And some more settings. Maybe set the default to now. There we go. And save again. All right, last one, we're going to add a URL for our website. We're going to choose a link field. So link is another contrib module that we put into core for Backdrop. We also have an email field module. We're not going to demo that one today. But the great thing about link field is that we took exactly the contrib module for link and put it in Backdrop, so it will be exactly the same if you're using Drupal 7 or Backdrop. I know in Drupal 8 they have a comparable module called URL that doesn't include all of the crazy edge case features. Because we took the proven successful module and put it in core the way it was, anything you were doing before with links you can do the same way with links again. All right, so next we're going to go to the Manage Displays tab, and there are only a few minor changes to the way we handle displays in Backdrop. In Drupal, when you landed on the Manage Displays tab, it would give you the default display and let you manage them. They're right here. In Backdrop, we've included a module called Entity View Modes. If you don't know what view modes are, you don't necessarily need to know. By default, you get two. You get one called Teaser, and then you get this default, which will work for everything else, but there's also like a full content display, which most people use for that's the page where you view the content. So this is just a page that lists all of your view modes, and then you click the Manage Display button on the right to configure the one you want. We have an issue to improve this as well, coming soon, but for now, we're just going to reorder the fields. So we'll put the body at the bottom, and we'll hide the screenshot. This sounds crazy, but I'll show you why later. And then let's see, maybe you want to do the inline launch date URL labels?
Oh yeah.
Why not?
But hidden by default.
Yes, hidden by default.
Hey.
What a shocker! Yeah. That's funny that you noticed that. That is definitely one of those things that's like, oh, these stupid labels, like, why are they there? Yeah, hidden by default. That's right, because you don't need a label that says screenshot. It's obvious that it's a screenshot. That's funny. It's a little thing sometimes.
I can't believe we've got the applause. Okay, that's it. Let's go ahead and create some content and see what it looks like. You have some examples, screenshots?
I don't have pictures of websites.
That's right.
So
We'll
let's just do.
That's creepy. Let's not do
Yeah,
that.
here we go. This one has a big mouse. Oh, look, I've typed big mouse before.
Use the screenshot from the demo. Okay. That's fine.
Sure.
Just launched. Hot off the presses. I've done this before too.
Apparently.
Alright.
It's probably from years ago. Okay.
Why are these comment settings open? That's fine. We'll add a comment.
Oh, oops, yeah.
That's fine. Everything's fine. Okay. Let's go ahead and save it and see what happens. Publish now.
I'm gonna close it.
Oh, okay. Fine. Alright, so here's a piece of content. We have launch date, URL, and copy. Hooray.
Do I need to do multiple ones?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to do, just because we're going to do a view next, we need a view.
It's not a big house. Go with the big mouse.
Oh, it looks like a...
Eatcake.com.
Hang on, I've got one for that too. Smallhouse.com.
Does not have a security certificate.
Let's see. What was that last one? Eat cake.
Yeah.
Cake.
Sure.
There we go.
Isn't it fun watching people create content?
Okay.
Alright.
I forgot the comment settings on the second
Fine.
one, but
Everything's fine.
okay.
Okay, so now we have 3 pieces of content. The next thing we're going to do is create a view. Have all of you used views module before? Okay, good, because we're going to go through this really fast and it doesn't really matter because it's exactly the same as it was in Drupal 7. We're going to create a view name called projects. We're going to change the,
Oh, I'm
it went
sorry.
too fast.
I'm sorry. I accidentally hit it.
Okay, we're going to change the type of content to projects. And then we're going to not create a page, but we are going to create a block. The title is fine. We'll leave everything. Oh, we'll change this to HTML list and then make it unordered. That's fine. Okay. So we've made a block. Just for fun, will you go to the block settings section and change the admin label? Or do you want to not do that?
Sure.
Right. So we can call this projects, whatever. There you go. Project list. Okay. So this is the same views interface you know and love from Drupal 7. If you are familiar with panels, the block settings section is the same as what used to be called pane settings for the content pane views. We give it a very little design cleanup, so like these colors are more in line with the rest of the colors on the 7 theme instead of what was in views, which was no longer a match after we did our 7 theme update. But everything should be in roughly the same place as it was before. So if you know how to use views, we're not trying to break that existing knowledge for you.
Yeah. I'll also say, because we have something analogous to panels, you can also do stuff like you can configure like per instance things that you can allow, like every time you place the block, you can override some view settings per instance that you place, which
If you
is
want to get really crazy
yeah,
with it.
advanced use case.
It's really fun though. All right, so scroll to the bottom and hit the preview button just to make sure we get getting things that we want. Okay, close enough. Sounds good. All right, so now that you guys have seen that we have views, which is really the only point of this exercise, we're going to go ahead and create a layout. And this is something you haven't seen before. Well, maybe. Okay, so in Backdrop, we have taken what was the panels module in Drupal 7 and we threw away the user interface and we wrote an entirely new one. And all of the functionality that was still there in panels is still there in Backdrop. It's mostly the same. There are a couple of minor differences in, like if you had written panels plugins, it's a little different in Backdrop. But all the concepts map exactly one to one. But layouts, the way they are in Backdrop, are not just the center content area of the page, which is where panels worked in Drupal. They cover everything from the top left corner of your browser to the bottom right. So this is also a module in Drupal 7 that's called Panels Everywhere that takes over the display of what was essentially your page template in your theme. So we have included 3 templates by default out of the box in Backdrop. There's the default layout, which will go for every page on your site unless specifically overwritten. We have the administrative layout, which will happen anytime you see the administrative theme. So in this case, we're running the 7 theme, which is the same theme that was in Drupal 7. But it's only on the back end administrative pages of your site. And then we have added the only sort of guaranteed use case for a given special layout, which is the homepage. It's the most common use case where people want their homepage to have different numbers of rows and columns than any other page on your site. Most sites usually have a lot more than one layout, but because they're all different, we didn't want to set them up by default. So the first thing we're going to do is edit our default layout. So this should make a change to every page on our site unless otherwise specified. And what we can do is move some blocks around on the page. This page is, of course, drag and drop, as you would expect. A little user interface improvement over Drupal 7, but it does still render the page as though it were a wireframe. It does not render the page as though it is the front end of your site. What we can do is add a new block. So if we use the Add Block button and search, for example, the block we just created is called Project List. This will give us the ability to drop in this block into any region on our page. Because we checked that box in the Views UI to override the pager options, we now have an option here to specify the number of items we want to see in our listing. But otherwise, we're going to do this now.
Oh, 200. Okay, fine.
That's fine, we can do it here. Or we can add another block. Let's add a block of contact information, maybe into the sidebar.
Okay.
So if this was a custom block, like something we were just about to create out of thin air, you have to type, yep, custom block. This is the same as the custom block module in Drupal 8 or the blocks module in Drupal 7. We can just create whatever information we want and stick it directly into this page. If you want to have a block that only exists once, you just save it as it is. But if you would like to have a block that you can reuse across any number of layouts, there's a checkbox here to make this block reusable, which will let you specify an administration label and a description, which you can use in that search box when you go to embed that block the next time. We've also included a module called block class, not directly included, but provide the same feature, where you can specify the classes that you want on that outside wrapper tag for your block. So if you're trying to make blocks match your theme, or if you have a bunch of provided patterns that you can use, you can type in classes there. But we also wanted you to be able to go one step further. And if you change the type of block from default to dynamic, you can control every piece of markup that your block outputs. So you can control the wrapping tag, the class on the wrapping tag, the heading level, the class on the heading level, and that inner tag and the class on the inner tag. So if you want to create a block that doesn't have any extra markup on it, which is particularly common if you're putting in a view that already has more than enough markup on it, you can go ahead and remove all of those wrapper tags. And this also makes it really easy to do something like buy a pre-made HTML template and customize the markup on your pages to exactly match the markup that that template expects you to have.
Question.
Yes.
Can you make the content reusable later, or do you have to do it now, like in panels?
No, so you can come back to it and click that checkbox at any time, and it'll copy the content out of this layouts configuration into its own. Or vice versa. I think you can uncheck it. And
I think so, but it leaves the default one there, and it makes it a copy. Yeah.
All right. So the next thing we can do is save the layout and then go take a look at any page on our site that is not the home page. So for example, a blog post, which should see our contact information on the sidebar and a list of projects below. Ta-da! All right, what happens if we want to make a new page on our site with a different layout? So if we go back to structure layouts and click add layout, we have the opportunity to name it. We can call it something like marketing page, just for example. And you can see all of the layouts that are included with core. So these are called layout templates because there's different shapes for how you want your columns and layouts. These are all using the Bootstrap 4 grid system, which is using Flexbox instead of floats or grids or whatever's the new hotness right now. You can see that all of them are pretty standard, like 1 column, 2 column, 3 column, stacked, not stacked, except for Simmons, which is crazy. And that's there because it is an exact match to the Bartik layout. And so if anyone's upgrading from Drupal 7 and they were using that Bartik layout, we want to make sure that we can support that same block placement in Backdrop as well. The only difference is that this one is responsive. All right, so if we choose the Sutro layout, we can go ahead and give it a path. So maybe make it like marketing page. This is something that's super hard to do in Drupal, is just to create a new page, add a path, and have it do something different. If it's not a view and it's not a piece of content, like making a page can be super tricky. So in Backdrop, we just wanted to make it so that you can just give it a name and give it a path and say, I'm going to put stuff on it, and here's a layout, and it'll do that. So here's a layout. Let's put some stuff on it, maybe on the left-hand side. We can put in a marketing block, or yeah, contact information's good. And put it in.
I just put
Put in a
project list.
just a custom block that doesn't exist anywhere else. Oh yeah. So also, you notice Nate deleted the project block. So when you create a new layout, it automatically copies from your default layout all of your block placements. So we thought that would be a little bit of a time saver. It's much easier to remove things than put them back. So he deleted some of the stuff there. Don't delete that. That's fine. It's fine.
I left it.
Okay. Whew. All right. That's the next trick. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at our marketing page, and you can see that we have already thrown together a really quick page with a new layout and dropped some content into it. So here, now we're going to do the next trick, which is really exciting. So we're going to configure our existing layout. We're going to remove
There's a way I just get to the layout page, yeah.
the header, the navigation, and the breadcrumb. And then we're going to save it. Bam! Nothing on the page. So this is something that we think that marketing departments are going to love, because sometimes they just come up with massive amounts of HTML and we're like, make a page, and you're like, but it's in Drupal and that's really hard. So then you install panels everywhere and you fight with that for a while. Anyway, so this is how you do it in Backdrop. You can just remove the branding elements from the page, and you already have a CMS where you can edit your content. Just whatever they want. All right, next up, we are going to create a special layout, but only for one type of our content. So we have pages, posts, and projects, which I'll start with P. But what we're going to do is create a new layout just for those projects. So instead of using the one with the sidebar on the
Right.
we're going to choose one with the sidebar on the left. So this is going to be the Moscone layout. And when you enter in a path, you have to put in a system path. And if you put in a system path, Backdrop will recognize it as a system path. It'll add a context, which you don't necessarily need to understand, because it'll handle that for you. And then it'll override any page on the system using that system path. So this will also give us the ability to add visibility conditions, and the conditions take into account the context provided. So we now have conditions available for type of content, node ID, stuff like that. So here we can limit this to project. So now if we create this layout, it will copy all of the existing blocks from the default, and if we have something called sidebar and something called content, it'll just populate those for us, which is great. But because we have let's do it in the main content area. Or do you want to add something new? What were you going to do?
No, you're good.
Okay, but because we have that screenshot and we want to show that really big, and we hid that on our content display, we're going to go ahead and drop in a block that renders only that individual field. So there's one block per field and one field per block, whatever block field ability to drop it in. And when you add a field block, what you get are all of the same options that you see on the field UI form, so that you can customize your block field display the same way you would have done it in the other user interface. So you have the ability here to control the label display, whether you want to use an image style or not, whether you want to link it to any piece of content or not, whether you want to float it. Those are all the same options that were in field UI. And just because we can, we're going to go ahead and grab the main page content and throw that into the sidebar. So that's a maybe not real world, super common use case, but it's something that is super hard to do in Drupal. So I like to point out how easy it is to do in Backdrop.
That's it.
All right, so we're going to save the layout, and then we're going to go ahead and take a look at one of our project pieces of content. They're not there. You've got to go to the content listing page.
Oh yeah, my bad.
No, it's not going to do it either.
It's here.
There you go. All right, so this is the Eat Cake page. We now have the author information, launch date, and URL in the left sidebar with a giant screenshot of some guy thinking about cake on the right-hand side.
For example.
For example. How are we doing on time?
We're a little tight.
Okay. So
What time does this session end?
Like 3:15.
3:15, so
all right,
we have
Ellie,
7
see?
minutes.
Told you we were gonna run. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is show off configuration management, which is a favored topic. Configuration management is something that Drupal 8 has. It is a brilliant idea. We should have thought it a long time ago. And in order to create a product that's comparable to Drupal 8, we couldn't have done it without configuration management. So
The
in
next one
Backdrop,
doesn't start for 30 minutes, so you can go over it a little bit if you
whew, Okay, I'll breathe while talking from now on. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at an existing configuration file. So for example, we created a new block called contact information. So if we select from configuration group, custom blocks, and look at the individual file for contact information, you can see it printed out right here. For those of you who are savvy in determining what language you're looking at, you'll notice this is just a JSON file. There are a couple of reasons we chose to do our configuration in JSON. Number one, it's a good kind of lowest common denominator. Most developers are familiar with working in JSON. Number two, it's super fast to read and write these files because PHP has native JSON parsing built in. So we went with JSON. It aligns better with our principles than YAML or any of the other possible types that were considered at the time. Also, Drupal 8 was originally written with JSON, wasn't it? No?
I don't think it ever was. It was a leading contender.
It was part of the thought process. Okay, so this is what it looks like. If we wanted to do something crazy, like change a config, should we do this? This might be a bad example.
Okay, sure.
Just for fun, we're going to copy this entire file.
Oh.
And then we're going to go, so right now we're on a config export example. We're going to switch to config import, and we're going to paste it in, and we're going to change something like Oakland to Berkeley, because we're in Berkeley. Why not? And if we hit the import button, it'll automatically make this change to our site. There isn't any kind of staging step here or I don't know what it might be called. It just changes automatically. So if we go to a page and look at it, we now live in Berkeley instead of in Oakland. All right. And zip code's still valid because zip codes. All right. So let's go ahead and export all of the configuration for our entire site. So we do that by going to the full import export stage. And every time we've been clicking in the user interface, which is pretty much everything we've done here other than creating content, it's been writing files to disk. So our new content type, our new view, our new layout, the block we created, field settings, all of that stuff is in a configuration file. So if we tell it to export, it'll give us a huge bundle of all of the configuration.
Do you want me to pull that up?
It's right there. Oh,
Yeah.
you downloaded already?
Yeah.
Oh, you're fast. Okay, and so you can go ahead and open that up if you wanted to see what was in it. But it's basically a bunch of JSON files that look just like what we saw in the interface. If you ever get into trouble, you can see these and read them. We recommend using the user interface whenever possible to actually make changes, but they are there in case of emergency, nice and transparent to what's going on. But then what we could do is something super crazy, like go to Pantheon. Nate did this before we started this session. We fired up a Backdrop site on Pantheon.
Oh yeah. So you click this button from backdropcms.org.
And if you have a Pantheon account,
Then-
it gives you a CMS. It happens to be Backdrop. You can go ahead and log in, and from here we can go to the same page, the configuration, development, configuration, full import, export, and then we can upload the tar.gzip file that we downloaded from our local site. Hit the stage button. And here we do have a review step, like when you're uploading your entire site, generally a good idea to make sure you're not about to blow anything you didn't intend on blowing away. Is this our internet? Oh, there it goes. Okay, and so here it'll show you a list of all of the brand new files that it hasn't seen before. So this includes our custom block type.
The contact information.
Custom, yeah, what is this node page? Oh, these are, why does it say new?
This is a different site.
Because it's a different site. So we added these fields.
We didn't add page.
It's...
Let's click view differences and see why that's showing up here. Oh, it's going to show new though.
Oh, oh yeah.
I don't know what's going on here.
It may have been my fault because I futzed with things more than I should
that's
have.
what I think is going on. All right, well, let's go down to the, here we go. There's new stuff here. Views, view projects. We could take a look at that if we wanted to. But here, this stuff we've changed. We definitely changed our system information. So the name of the site used to be Badcamp B4, the Backdrop Fork, and now it is backdrop.local. You might not have wanted that changed. And then site mail has also been changed from no reply at Pantheon internal to no reply at Backdrop local. Whatever, neither one will work. Okay, we could also look at some of the other things we've changed, like our layout or both the homepage layout and the new layout we added. It's a little convoluted. Usually it's the kind of thing where you don't ever need to like read these. Usually it's just kind of an eyeball and be like, does that look like what I needed, yes or no? And if we decide Okay, sure, let's try it. Let's roll the dice and see what happens. We can click the import all button, and it does two things. It not only copies all the configuration files into their intended destination, but it'll also run any necessary database update changes. So for example, creating a new content type called project also required adding a bunch of fields. Those fields all have tables in the database. We have to create those database tables as part of this synchronization. So you shouldn't ever skip the sync step and drop config directly into the live location. But now we can go ahead and check and see, do we have a new content type or project? It looks like Nate has confirmed we do. Do we have a new view? We have a view called projects. That's great. And we have a new layout for the project content type. So that makes it super easy, and our marketing page. That makes it super easy for us to do things like create any new content types, fields, views, whatever on your local site, let your live site get content created on it, and just synchronize things up as needed, and no risk to your data on the live site. Question?
What about module dependencies?
So all of the dependencies are managed by Backdrop itself. So if you have a library, it's bundled in the module. So as long as your module version works on your Backdrop version, you should be good to go because the library is guaranteed to work with the module that
Or were you
bundled
asking
into.
about dependencies that config files have?
Right.
Yeah. So Backdrop isn't quite as sophisticated as Drupal 8 that it doesn't manage the modules that are turned on and off with configuration. And if you were to export a site that had a config file for a module that wasn't turned on, the importing site says you have to turn on that module before you can import the config. So it basically, the only actual, well, every module gets to provide its own validation of the files that it provides. And if a config file is found that no module manages, it just says, whoa, pump the brakes. We got to turn on that module before you can do the import because it can't validate properly without it.
So that was a lot easier for us to implement.
Yeah, and
But
we
it's also a lot safer kicking it back to the user and saying, verify, this is what you want to
and
run.
we don't allow people to turn off modules or delete fields with config.
Only manually.
Yeah, it gives you a nice message saying,
Field
turn
X.
that off or delete that field manually because actually even in Drupal 8 you can't delete a field unless it's empty, and so it kind of actually requires you to do something manual before you delete it anyway. So yeah, by eliminating the delete question, it made things a lot easier
And safer.
and safer. Yeah,
But if I did want to fully automate my deploys, how would I do so?
using update hooks to turn off the module instead of using config to turn it off. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else you want to show off? Can we mess up the site so that the red dot shows up?
Sure.
So this is my favorite usability improvement, but we have to break something in order to show it. So Nate's gonna turn on update free access in settings.php. That's my guess anyway. You could also change permissions on the files directory if you wanted to. We're gonna try and generate an error on the status report. That's the goal here. Update underscore, there it is. Reload.
Oh.
The caches? Is this the same site? Yeah.
It is.
Are you sure?
Now I'm not anymore. Yeah, it should be.
Home site's Backdrop.
Maybe it's a caching thing.
Shouldn't be.
That's really odd. No, it was a
There it
caching
is.
thing.
Well,
Well, that kind of,
defeats the
yeah,
purpose.
it took away the exciting part of it. Yeah. Okay, well here.
So in theory, if anything's wrong with your site, it will put up a little red dot in the top because, as we've all learned from Facebook, if there's a red dot on something, you cannot stop yourself from clicking on it. So we built a red dot in so that if there's something seriously wrong with your site, it'll tell you both on the front of your site and on the back end. And the red dot just links to the status report and it'll take you there and show you what's wrong. So if you had 2 or 3 things wrong, the number would be 2 or 3 or whatever, and here it would tell you what it is that needs to be updated. And then if you fix that file and update it right away, it should go away. What browser is this? How is this caching thing happening? This didn't happen the other day. Is it?
It's because it doesn't parse hook requirements every single request, so it had to have something to hit hook
Oh,
requirements.
if you're on the status report, it
Yeah.
does it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how we. Anyway, so yeah, if you fix it, it'll go away right away. That's one of my favorite things. Anything else you want to show?
No, but we're out of time, so I think that's okay.
Okay.
Any last questions?
Yeah, are you using Twig for theming?
No.
No. And kind of an interesting thing about that. So Jen was the Twig initiative lead actually for Drupal 8. But if you go back and watch our philosophy talk, we cover some things. And the number one principle that we have in Backdrop is
Don't change very much.
well, it's not don't change very much, but backwards compatibility is important. And Backdrop's primary selling point is the fact that you can move from Drupal 7 to Backdrop easily. We actually have an update thing that we didn't get to where I can upgrade from a Drupal 7 site to Backdrop in like 10
If
seconds.
any of you want to give up your 15-minute break, we have a demo site totally ready. No?
So,
Okay.
so our primary selling point is that it's easy to move from Drupal 7 to Backdrop. Backdrop treats Drupal 7 as its previous version. You just point your database at it, run update.php, and you're done. Make sure that your modules are in line with each other. But since it's so easy to port modules between Drupal 7 and Backdrop, the idea is port all of your modules to Backdrop, custom or the contrib ones if they don't exist yet. Point the database at, run update.php, it's the same. So the theme was an interesting question in that compatibility is important at that level too. So to make it so that you can easily move from D7 to Backdrop, the theme also retains like being PHP template, because otherwise it means, well, breaking everything.
It was a super interesting question because at the very beginning I'm like, maybe we'll get to do it, but as we like nailed down those principles, it was like, oh, we're supposed to adopt like the most common design patterns, not the coolest ones. It has to be similar, it has to be performant. They're like all of these things. It has to be simple, decrease abstraction. Like all of these things were like pointing to like, no, of course we couldn't use Twig. It goes against all of our principles. And so I was really sad and was like, okay, well, we know the theme system is a problem, right? That's why Twig went in Drupal 8. So knowing if I had to do this all over again, how would we do it? And so we looked at a bunch of the lessons that were learned from Twig and why Twig was a simpler solution to people, and we tried to implement those in the theme system in Backdrop. So we do things like we put all the function calls directly from the template files, and we put loops directly in the template files, like all of the things that people love about Twig with filters and functions and everything else you can do. We can do those things in PHP. We don't need the abstraction layer. And so that's what we did in Backdrop. So there are places where we did try to simplify template files and consolidate template files in the same way, but we're also trying to control the amount of change at any given time. So we're like, what's the most important one we need to work on? And let's clean up that one a little bit and make it easy for people to move from one to like a Drupal 7 theme to a Backdrop theme.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we're over time, so if you have more questions, grab us after the presentation, but thank you guys all for coming today.